ago. He's been calling me for about a month, I think now, and just kind of going through it a little bit here.
Right after you hit play, before we go any further, take 1 second. Like, share, and subscribe, because this isn't just another celebrity story. This is one of those timelines where everything stacks up like a chain reaction, where one decision leads to another, and before you realize it, the curve has already started bending in a direction you can't easily reverse. In January 2026, Cory Harrison appeared in photos that didn't look like anything fans were used to seeing. Not the confident guy behind the counter, not the sharp negotiator from TV, but someone lying in a hospital bed, face swollen, hands wrapped, ribs shattered in multiple places. 11 broken ribs. That's not just an injury, that's a system-wide failure in the body, the kind that forces everything to slow down whether you want it or not. And this wasn't even his first crash. It was his third major motorcycle accident. At that point, you stop calling it bad luck. You start seeing a pattern, like repeated data points forming a trend line that's been there all along. But the real story doesn't begin with that crash. It never does. Events like that are just the visible spike on a graph that's been building quietly underneath for years. Cory Harrison, full name Richard Cory Harrison, was born into something that already had momentum. April 27, 1983, Las Vegas. Before he even understood what work meant, he was already connected to a business that would define his life. His father, Rick Harrison, and his grandfather, Richard Benjamin Harrison, were building what would later become one of the most recognized pawn shops in America. From the outside, it sounds almost structured, almost destined. But inside, things were less stable. His parents were young, too young, really, and the relationship didn't hold. By the time Cory was just 2 years old, the marriage had already broken apart. That kind of early instability doesn't always show up immediately, but it leaves an imprint. It changes how you look for consistency later. For Cory, that consistency became the shop. When the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop opened in 1989, it wasn't just a business, it became his environment, his routine, almost like a fixed coordinate in a life where other variables kept shifting. While other kids had playgrounds, he had counters, deals, negotiations. He grew up watching people walk in with stories, some real, some exaggerated, some completely fake. And over time, he learned something most people never fully grasp. Value is rarely what it looks like on the surface. By the age of 9, he wasn't just hanging around. He was working, cleaning, polishing, handling items. And while his hands were doing basic tasks, his brain was absorbing patterns. How people lie, how people negotiate, how money changes behavior. That kind of education doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from repetition, from exposure, from making mistakes. And he made mistakes, big ones, like the time he bought multiple fake Rolex watches in a single week. That wasn't just a financial loss, it was a correction point, a moment where the system recalibrates. After that, he didn't just work, he studied. Details, authenticity, tiny differences that separate real from fake. That failure became part of what made him sharp later. Around the same time, another constant entered his life, Austin Lee Russell. Their friendship started early, before fame, before cameras, just 2 kids in Las Vegas. And that matters because when everything else changes later, those early connections become anchors. As Cory got older, school became less important, not because he couldn't do it, but because he was already building something else. His path wasn't academic, it was practical. He learned by doing, by failing, by adjusting. That kind of learning curve is messy, but it's real. Eventually, he stepped away from the shop for a bit, trying other jobs, construction, electrical work, a different kind of life. But those environments lacked something, the unpredictability he had grown used to. The pawn shop wasn't just work, it was dynamic, every day different, every deal a new variable. So he came back, and not as the kid anymore, as someone who wanted control, management, responsibility. And he got it, running operations, handling staff, making decisions that affected real money, real outcomes. That shift from worker to decision maker changes how you see everything. Then, in 2009, everything scaled. Pawn Stars premiered, and what had been a local business suddenly became global. Attention multiplied, crowds increased, pressure intensified. If you imagine it like a graph, this is where the slope gets steep. Rapid growth, high visibility, constant scrutiny. Cory became Big Hoss, a recognizable face, a personality people connected with. But behind that image, there were personal battles running in parallel. His weight, for example, had reached over 400 pounds. That's not just a number, it's a warning signal. And eventually, that warning became unavoidable. In 2010, a doctor told him he was heading towards serious health issues. That moment acted like a trigger. Immediate action, surgery, lifestyle change, rapid weight loss, nearly 200 pounds gone over time. That kind of transformation isn't just physical, it rewires how you move, how you think, how you see yourself. But even as one part of his life stabilized, others became more chaotic. There were legal issues, incidents that kept appearing at different points along the timeline. In 2011, an arrest, after a confrontation, alcohol involved, tension escalating, a situation that could have been avoided but wasn't. Then, years later, in 2023, another moment, this time a DUI stop. Refusal to take a field test, blood draw, conflicting explanations, nothing fully resolved publicly. Each of these events, on their own, might seem isolated, but when you place them on a timeline, they start forming a sequence. Not identical events, but similar patterns, impulses, decisions, consequences. Then there was the 2014 RV incident. Allegations of heavy damage, disputes over responsibility, financial implications. Again, not catastrophic alone, but another data point. At the same time, his personal life wasn't stable either. Marriage, divorce, another relationship, another breakup. A child entering the picture in the middle of all that change. Emotional variables shifting constantly. And then came loss. In 2018, his grandfather, the old man, passed away. That wasn't just a family loss, it was the removal of a central figure in his daily life, someone he worked with, learned from, joked with. That kind of absence doesn't just disappear, it leaves a gap in the system. Then, in 2024, something even heavier. His brother, Adam's death from an overdose. That's the kind of event that doesn't just affect emotions, it changes perspective, permanently. So by this point, you can start to see the full equation. Fame, pressure, personal struggles, loss, responsibility, freedom, all interacting at once. So when Cory decided to step away from the show and move to Mexico, it wasn't random. It was a shift in variables, a change in environment, a way to reduce pressure, to step off the constant upward slope of visibility. He described it simply. He didn't want to keep playing the same role forever. He wasn't that younger version of himself anymore. And that's a key point. Growth doesn't always align with public expectations. But even after changing location, changing pace, the underlying patterns didn't fully disappear. And that brings everything back to January 2026, the motorcycle crash. No other vehicles involved, just him, which makes it more telling, because when external variables are removed, what's left is internal decision-making, speed, control, risk. 11 broken ribs, hands injured, face swollen, 3 nights in the hospital, 6 weeks of recovery. That's not minor, that's a forced pause, a moment where the system shuts down to prevent further damage. And here's the real question people keep asking. What is he running from? But maybe that's not the right way to frame it, because if you look at the full timeline, it doesn't necessarily look like running. It looks more like momentum, like someone who's been moving at high speed for a long time, making decisions in real time, adjusting as things happen, sometimes getting it right, sometimes not. And eventually, physics catches up, not metaphorically, literally. The body slows you down when nothing else does. So what finally caught up to him? Not one thing, not one mistake, but the accumulation of everything. Years of pressure, choices, risks, losses, and the kind of lifestyle that keeps pushing forward without always stopping to recalibrate. And the truth is, we don't yet know what happens next, because recovery isn't just about bones healing, it's about what changes after. Does the pattern continue, or does the graph finally flatten? That part of the story is still being written. And if you made it this far, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this aren't just about what happened, they're about what happens next.